All right, let's talk about one of the most important ideas in all of climate science, tipping points. We're going to look at how our planet is kind of balanced on a knife's edge, but also how that very same idea, that sudden, super fast change, might actually be our best reason for hope. Okay, let's get into it. Think about a glass sitting right on the edge of a table. You can nudge it again, and not much happens, right? But then just one tiny final push, and boom, it's not on the table anymore, it's on the floor in a million pieces. That last little push crossed a critical line, and it triggered a sudden, massive, and totally irreversible change.
Well, that super simple idea is exactly what has climate scientists so worried, but, on a planetary scale. They're not just tracking a slow, gradual warming. They're watching out for the risk of pushing our entire Earth systems past a point of no return.
So let's just lay out the official definition here. A climate tipping point is a critical threshold. Once you cross it, some part of the Earth's system can just flip into a completely new state. And here's the really crucial part. That change is often irreversible. Think about a glacier that melts. Even if we somehow manage to cool the planet back down, you can't just refreeze it. It's not going to snap back to the way it was before.
And listen, this isn't just about one single problem. As you can see from this map, scientists have actually identified a whole network of these potential tipping points all over the globe. We're talking about massive ice sheets disintegrating, the Amazon rainforest potentially dying back, huge shifts in the way our oceans and atmosphere circulate. And they're all connected. They're all part of this one complex global system.
To make this feel a little more real, let's zoom in on one of the most critical of these tipping points. It's a huge system of ocean currents that basically acts like the planet's circulatory system.
Okay, it's called the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, which is a mouthful, I know, so everyone just calls it the AMOC. And the best way to think about it is as a giant conveyor belt in the ocean. It pulls warm, salty water up from the tropics towards the north. Up there, it cools down, gets denser, sinks, and then flows all the way back south. This whole process is absolutely essential for regulating our climate, especially in places like Europe, which are kept way warmer than they'd be otherwise. So, what happens if that conveyor belt starts to break down?
Now, I know this slide looks complicated, but it tells a really important story, so let's walk through it. If the AMOC collapses, it's not just an ocean problem. It's a global domino effect. So look at the top left. The first things that happen are what you'd probably expect. Rainfall patterns go haywire, we see more extreme temperatures, sea levels rise. But then, look at the next level down. Those things cause cascading problems for us, for our societies. We get water shortages, our infrastructure gets damaged, our health suffers. And then finally, that bottom row shows the biggest risks of all. Food and energy supplies become unstable, and that can even lead to conflict. That's how one tipping point can start to unravel everything.
So, the big question is, how likely is this to actually happen? Well, the IPCC, that's the world's leading group of climate scientists, they say a full collapse this century is very unlikely. That means about a 10% chance or less. But, and this is a really big but, they only have medium confidence in that number. And why is that? Well, because we just don't have a ton of historical data, and the computer models have a really hard time capturing how complex this all is. So what we're left with is a low probability but unbelievably high impact risk, which really makes you wonder,
How are we supposed to think about these enormous, unpredictable risks? Turns out it requires a totally different way of looking at the world.
Seriously, when the consequences of something could be absolutely catastrophic, but the odds are fuzzy and hard to pin down, how do you even approach that problem? You need a whole new mental model for it. The thinker Nassim Taleb gives us a really helpful way to think about this. Thin tails versus fat tails. So, on the left, you've got thin-tailed risks. Think of these as nature's way. They're bottom-up, with lots of small changes that are usually contained, predictable. Now, on the right, you have fat-tailed risks. These tend to come from our own big top-down interventions. These are huge, interconnected systems where just one single failure can cascade into a global catastrophe. The risks here are wildly unpredictable and can be completely off the charts. And our global energy system, built on fossil fuels, it is a perfect example of a top-down intervention that has created one of the biggest fat-tailed risks imaginable: climate change itself.
And look, this isn't just some abstract theory. History is absolutely littered with cautionary tales of well-meaning, large-scale projects that ended in total fat-tail disasters.
Let's take a look at China's Four Pests campaign back in the 1950s. On paper, the goal seemed pretty logical, right? Sparrows eat grain seed,
So if you get rid of the sparrows, you should get a bigger harvest. Simple. It was this massive top-down attempt to re-engineer an entire ecosystem.
But the unintended result? It was an absolute catastrophe. See, without the sparrows there to eat them, the locust populations just exploded. These massive swarms of insects ended up eating way more grain than the sparrows ever did, and it became a major factor in one of the worst famines in all of human history. A tragic, textbook case of a fat tail risk coming true.
Or how about Egypt's Aswan High Dam? Again, the goals here were great. Stop the Nile's unpredictable floods, generate clean power, and get more water for farms. It was this incredible feat of modern engineering designed to tame nature. And the dam, well, it did those things. But it also blocked the flow of nutrient-rich silt that had been fertilizing the Nile Delta for thousands of years. This caused the fisheries downstream to collapse, the soil to become salty as farmers turned to artificial fertilizers, and it triggered massive coastal erosion. Another top-down solution with devastating, unforeseen consequences for the whole system.
Okay, so hearing about all these negative tipping points and fat tail risks can be pretty terrifying. I get it, but here's where the whole story pivots. What if we could use that same power of rapid, system-wide change for good? What if we're actually on the verge of a positive tipping point?
Okay, check out this chart. It shows a few different possible futures for global emissions. I want you to look at that green line, the one labeled Continued Acceleration. This is what happens if the incredible, explosive growth we're seeing in solar, wind, and electric vehicles just keeps going. And that word explosive is so important. It's the same kind of runaway change we fear in negative tipping points, but this time it is working for us. This rapid switch to clean tech might actually be powerful enough to bend the entire global emissions curve downwards, permanently.
In fact, if we stay on that accelerated path, some analysis suggests there is a 70% chance that global greenhouse gas emissions have already peaked, as in the highest point was last year in 2023. And this isn't just wishful thinking. It's being driven by a powerful, positive feedback loop. The cheaper solar panels get, the more people buy them, which drives more investment and innovation, which makes them even cheaper. That right there is the engine of a positive tip.
So that leaves us with one last really crucial question. We've seen the profound danger of pushing natural systems past their breaking point, but we are also seeing the incredible potential of positive tipping points in how we generate power and get around. The question for all of us now is, what will it take to slam the brakes on the bad ones and hit the accelerator on the good ones? That is the challenge and the huge opportunity right in front of us.